So let's get on to the artifacts section. Here we have Academy Manufacturer. Wait, Academy Manufacturer? Manufacturer. That's a weird word. So it's 3 mana for a 1/3 artifact creature assembly worker. And it says if you would create a clue, food, or treasure token, instead create one of each. Which is actually really goddamn cool. So basically, if you are in a deck that has the ability to create any one of these tokens semi-reliably, suddenly you're just getting all 3 of them. So like, this is obviously not a commander, so it's not like a guaranteed like this will work perfectly, but like, think about like casting a Dockside Extortionist, right? You cast Dockside Extortionist, your opponents have, let's say, 6 artifacts and enchantments between the 3 of them in a game of Commander. You are now getting 6 clues and 6 foods in addition to 6 treasure tokens. Which is like, you may not get to use all of that like right away, but like, that's just a lot of value that you're getting completely for free. Now, obviously, the biggest like restriction on this card is not every deck is going to care about this. Not every deck is going to have enough cards to make this not just be a 3-mana 1/3 a lot of the time. Excuse me. But in a deck that is consistently making any one of these types, or more than one, obviously, but if you're consistently making clues or food or treasure, this card is absurd. Or like, really good. And I'm like pretty excited to see people do some dumb things with this, honestly. Because the value is real if you can get there. Next one is Altar of the Goyf, which is a very weirdly meta card. Oh, you wish the Academy Manufacturer as a legendary creature would be very cool. I completely agree. That would be actually awesome. Altar of the Goyf. It's a weird card. It's a kind of a meme card, honestly, like right up to like the flavor text. What dies, because obviously the original Lurgoyf, or the original Tarmogoyf flavor text is what doesn't, wait, what is it? Hang on. What doesn't grow dies, and what dies grows the Tarmogoyf. That's the text, I believe. So this is what dies grows the illegible, and I'm not sure if that's because the word Lurgoyf or Tarmogoyf is a really weird illegible word, or because they like, I don't even know. It's weird. It's also a tribal artifact Lurgoyf, for no particular reason other than obviously it's the Altar of the Goyf. I also just don't like that it's the Altar of the Goyf, because like Goyf is such a, it's sort of like if people were to like, if they were to like reprint Dark Confidant but just call it Bob Dark Confidant. Like it's Magic player slang, and it's weird to see Magic player slang printed on a card. Like, this really should just be Altar of the Tarmogoyf, or at least Altar of the Lurgoyf. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me that it's just Altar of the Goyf, because Goyf is just not what the name is in the lore. It's just a weird, like, fourth wall breakage, and I don't like it. Also, it's really stupid that it doesn't make the creature that it pumps into a Goyf, because it says Lurgoyf creatures you control have trample, but then the creature that gets buffed equal to number of card types among cards in all graveyards doesn't become a Lurgoyf, therefore doesn't benefit from the trample. This card is like close to being cool, but like kind of failed on a couple of key axes, and as a result is just kind of embarrassing, honestly. I don't like it. Batterbone is obviously a cute little like throwback to Batterskull. It is not as good as Batterskull, let me put it that way. The equip is still 5. It is a 2-drop. But it's basically, it's a 2-mana 1/1 Vigilance lifelink with equipped 5. It's not good. But I enjoy it just because a lot of these are just fun because they're like nonsense references. They had fun with these artifacts, I will say. Like basically every one of these artifacts is just like a giant meme of something. So Bottle Golems is obviously a throwback to Bottle Gnomes. I'm a little disappointed that you cannot sack it to itself the way that you could with Bottle Gnomes. Like you can't sack it to gain 3 life the way Bottle Gnomes would let you. So again, a bit of a weird fail there, but whatever. It's a fun card. Brainstone, obviously being a play on Brainstorm. Brainstorm for 3 mana, obviously a little bit worse than Brainstorm for 1, but you do get the upside of this being a repeatable effect through recurring your mana rocks with things like Emery and bloody hell, I don't know. There are other ways to do it. I'm just not thinking of them right now. But basically, like, yeah, it's recursible, and therefore, obviously, you can get more than one bite at the apple. It's a cool card. It's neat. It's neat. But yeah, literally just 1 mana and then 2 in sack, Brainstorm. That's the card. Dermo Taxi is actually incredible. I don't think this card is very good, but it's hilarious. It is a 2 mana vehicle, except that it doesn't actually have crew. Weirdly, I don't actually know why it doesn't. I guess it's because they want you to specifically tap 2 creatures. And the only reason I think this card wants you to tap 2 creatures rather than like have crew 2 or crew 3 or whatever is because the whole joke is it's just like 2 people in this like shoddily crafted like elephant vehicle thing. And obviously Dermo Taxi, so like Dermo is like oh my god, it's like skin. So it's like a skin, so it's like a taxi made of skin, but also taxidermy is like, you know, preserved. It just, there are so many jokes going on in one card that I can't help but really enjoy it, even though it's a very silly card at its core. What it does do, though, is it has imprint. So when it enters the battlefield, exile a creature card from a graveyard, notably any graveyard. And then it says tap 2 creatures you control until end of turn. Dermo Taxi becomes a copy of the exiled card. I'm not really sure why it's a vehicle other than because it's funny. Because, like, it doesn't have a power and toughness, and you're not even crewing it. It doesn't even have the crew ability, which is, like, pretty much on every vehicle. But, like, the flavor is still there, which is good. Like, this is a flavor home run as far as I'm concerned, but in practice, I'm not sure how good this card actually is. Continuing with the references to old cards, we have Diamond Lion, which of course is a reference to Lion's Eye Diamond. That being said, this card is significantly worse than Lion's Eye Diamond. First of all, because it costs 2 mana instead of 0 mana. And second of all, because the ability is a tap ability, which of course means that not only does this cost 2 mana before you get to do this, but it also has Summoning Sickness, so you have to wait an additional turn. So yeah, LED, this is not. Of course, LED is a pretty broken card, and it's probably a good thing that they didn't put LED or something even remotely close to its power level into Modern. That would probably be a mistake. But yeah, again, it just is literally LED's ability on a 2/2 with Summoning Sickness for 2. I don't know if that card's good. I don't think it's good for Commander, like, at all. Maybe it'll be good in Modern, but yeah, I don't know. Somebody figure this card out. I don't think it's good. Fodder Tosser is just limited fodder. Haha. Cauldron Complete is a very, very sweet flavor card. So, obviously, this is a living weapon creature, or it's an equipment, but it's a living weapon, so it's also kind of inherently a creature by extension. And its abilities are essentially the sum total of what the actual completed Cauldron construct does when you assemble the sword, shield, and helmet of Cauldron from the Mirrodin block from years and years ago. Which would give the created Golem +5/+5, first strike, transport, indestructible, haste, and then whenever this creature deals combat damage to a creature, exile that creature, and it's indestructible. So now they just made this into a straight up living weapon. I'm actually very curious about this card because I think this card could be pretty absurd with Stoneforge Mystic. The biggest detractor being that it's like, obviously, like the main comparison here would be Batterskull. Whereas the floor on Batterskull or the ceiling on Batterskull is lower, but the floor, I believe, is higher because you can also pick up a Batterskull and reset it. Whereas once you kill the Germ token on this, you're now just stuck paying 7 mana to re-equip it to something, which is like, kind of feels like good luck, have fun territory. But it's such a sweet flavor win, and it's really cool that like this Cauldron artifact has been like, again, this is a bit of like a lore reference, but this Cauldron artifact was like supposed to save the Mirrans from Memnarch, who went insane and tried to like murder everybody, only to get mind controlled by Memnarch and turned against the Mirrans. And then later on, now it's actually also been like re-mind controlled by the Phyrexians, and so it's just like this thing was like created to be the defender of the realm, and it's just like become like the betrayer of the realm twice over now. It's just like very funny, but also very like unfortunate. Liquid Metal Torque is a pretty cool card. It's obviously a riff on Liquid Metal Coating, which has tap to make a non-land, in this case, non-land permanent. I think Coating could be any permanent, although I could be wrong about that. But basically, make a non-land permanent artifact in addition to its other types, or just tap to add a colorless. Notably, it's a 2-mana rock in Modern, which actually kind of matters. Like 2-mana rocks, generally speaking, are relatively strong, and there aren't that many of them. Actually, no, what am I talking about? For Modern, this is pretty irrelevant, actually. Modern has plenty of 2-mana rocks already, so I don't know. Mostly, this is going to be a question of whether or not the, for both Modern and Commander, which is, of course, what we're talking about, this is going to be a question of, like, whether or not the Liquid Metal part is relevant. Because even Commander now, at this point, has, I think, enough of a critical mass of 2-mana rocks that this isn't super necessary unless you're actually getting value out of the other mode as well. But if you are, then it's quite good. Like, I think this card is, actually, speaking of Memnarch, this card would be very good in Memnarch because you basically just tap it to make something an artifact, and then Memnarch just grabs it, right? Which is, like, it probably just, if nothing else, either replaces Liquid Metal Coating or just is another copy of it, which is great. Monoskellion is obviously just a fun riff on Triskelion. Instead of being a 6-mana 1/1 with 3 counters, it's a 2-mana 1/1 with 1 counter. The biggest issue with this is that it does cost 1 colorless to activate the ability as opposed to being free the way it is on Triskelion. This is largely, I'm assuming, to prevent infinite combos because Triskelion is part of a bunch of annoying infinite combos in Commander. So it's probably good from a power perspective that this not be infinitely abusable. However, it does, as a result, by adding a single 1 colorless cost, substantially dampen its applications. Also, interesting precedent to set because if there is a Triskelion and there is now, in fact, a Monoskelion, then there is presumably a Biskelion coming to a Magic set near you at some point in the future. In much the same way that they printed Gargadon in this set to go along with the lesser and greater Gargadons of years past. Let's see, what else is interesting? What else do we want to talk about? Nettle Assist is neat, actually. I think that this card is potentially like a very good equipment. So it's a 3-mana equipment with Living Weapon. And it gives, it has Equip 2. But it says, equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. So it is essentially a 3-mana 1/1 at base because it counts itself. But it can get quite large depending on what the rest of your deck and board looks like. So it's mostly just like a stat ball. Like, it doesn't do anything except just make a thing chunkier. But it's a reasonable rate for an effect that scales relatively well. Probably not suitable for high power Commander environments, but mid to low power, I think this is just fine. Ornithopter of Paradise is probably not winning prizes for like creative naming anytime soon, but yeah, it's exactly what you would assume it would be. It is the stat line of an Ornithopter, which is to say it is a 0/2 artifact, and it has flying, and then it has the ability of a Bird of Paradise, which is to tap for 1 mana of any color. Now, why this costs 2, I am pretty sure it's mostly just because they didn't want to print a strictly better Birds of Paradise. But the difference between 1 and 2 is pretty substantive, unfortunately, and I don't expect this to be much of a player in Commander. Unless you're mono, I don't know, unless you're really hard up for mana fixing. I don't know, this isn't it. I don't think this is it. Sign of Draco is kind of a wonky mythic. I'm kind of like really hoping this is like kind of the mythic you don't want to open, in my opinion. So it's a 12 mana 4/4, but it has Domain, which is to say that it costs 2 mana less for each basic land type among lands you control. So basically, if you have all 5 basic land types represented, this will actually only cost 2 mana, right? Because each one of the 5 will represent a 2 mana discount. So this could be a 2 mana 4/4 flyer if you have, you know, the 5 Fecta or whatever you want to call it. At which point it is pretty good. And then each creature you control has Vigilance if it's white, Hexproof if it's blue, Lifelink if it's black, First Strike if it's red, and Trample if it's green. So it basically just grants your creatures an evergreen ability, emblematic or representative of the color. I don't know what this card is doing. I don't think this card is particularly impressive in Commander. Like, it's fine. It's okay. I don't love it. It's not amazing. It's not terrible. I don't love it, though. And I'm definitely going to be sad when it's definitely like one of the only mythics I opened in my Commander box. Or my Commander box, yes, my Commander box. My Modern Horizons 2 box. Sojourner's Companion is a potentially free 4/4 due to the affinity ability that also has artifact land cycling, so you can cycle it to go find artifact lands. There are 5 of them that currently exist, right? The Great Furnace, Seed of the Synod cycle from original Mirrodin. There are some more that they've printed in this set. We'll take a look at those in a minute. But yeah, in this set, it is here to go get those dual lands. So this is actually colorless dual mana fixing, which makes me feel this card is actually probably very good and limited. But I'm also reasonably sure this card is stone unplayable in Commander, so we're moving on. Soul Talisman has Suspend 3 for 1 mana, and it taps to make 2 colorless. So of course, this is, very uncryptically a direct reference to Sol Ring. However, I am pretty sure this card is unplayable. Because turns out that getting your Sol Ring 3 turns after you pay 1 mana for it is really, really, really much worse than getting it immediately. And it's not that it's not like playing a Sol Ring on turn, you can play a Sol Ring on turn 1, right? It's not like playing a Sol Ring on turn 4 is bad, but suspending a Sol Ring on turn 4 is awful. Because it's the waiting part that sucks. Drawing your Sol Ring on turn 7, fine. Drawing this on turn 7, blank piece of cardboard. Worse than basic land on turn 7. Which makes me feel like this card is just stone unplayable. Like, I just don't know. Like, the only acceptable time to draw this card is turn 1. Maybe turn 2. After that, I'm upset. Like, it's just not doing anything. And I'm not here for it. So, you tried, but, yeah. Similar to the Mox Tantalite from last Modern Horizons product, just because the card it's based on is broken does not mean the Suspend card is broken. Cards that are possibly broken. Sword of Hearth and Home is the 9th, I believe, in the cycle of Sword of X and Y. There's 1 remaining. I think it's the red-green one, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so Sword of Hearth and Home, 3 mana, as always, and 2 mana to equip. That's been the staple the whole time. +2/+2, and this one gives protection from green and from white. And the abilities on hit for this one are quite powerful. So it's exile up to 1 target creature you own, then search your library for a basic land card, put both cards onto the battlefield under your control, then shuffle. So basically, you get to Rampant Growth and blink a creature every time the sword connects with an opponent. Those are 2 very powerful abilities. Now, you need the blink ability to be relevant for this card to be good. Just having it be a Sword of Rampant Growth is not good enough because Sword of the Animist already exists, and that card is better at doing that. However, if you are getting value out of both abilities, out of both triggers each time, this card is very strong. But you really do need to be getting value out of the blink as well as the Rampant Growth, or you're just playing an overcosted Sword of the Animist in most scenarios. Alright, we already looked at the cookbook, so we're going to go right past that. Void Mirror is another one of those, it's kind of like Break the Ice, where, if your metagame is calling for this, you'll know. If it's not, then you're not going to play it. So this says, whenever a player casts a spell, if no colored mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. So if you've got a player who's playing a lot of Force of Will, Force of Vigor, Force of Negation type stuff, and you're just annoyed about it, you can make them play fair with this. If your play group has a lot of artifact, artifact synergy stuff, and you're sick of losing to that, you can play this. If your play group has a Kozilek player or an Ulamog player, this will basically shut their entire deck down. But yeah, again, you'll know if you want it, and you probably won't. But if you do, it's a good tool to have in your belt. All right, and our last new artifact is Zabaz, the Glimmer Wasp, a legendary, as a matter of fact. So it's a 1-mana 0/0 with modular 1. So of course that means it will come to play with a single 1/1 counter. So it's essentially a 1-mana 1/1. If a modular triggered ability would put 1 or more +1/+1 counters on a creature you control, put that many +1/+1/+1 counter on it instead. So this is basically and then it has a red ability to destroy target effect you control, aka to like trigger a modular ability, and a white ability to make it gain flying until end of turn. I don't think this card is good. I don't believe there is anywhere near enough modular support in Magic right now. They printed a bunch of modular cards in both white and red, but they're not very good cards for Commander. So like this is basically going to be like a meme theme nonsense deck. It's going to be almost like by definition a low power deck. But it's a cool card to exist, and you never know. Over the years, we may see more modular things that will like slowly but surely power this card up. But I think this card is more silly than it is good. But it is a fun little card. It's a cute little card. I enjoy it. I enjoy it. All right, and then we're going to wrap up with the lands. So, of course, you know, it would be remiss not to mention the fact that enemy fetch lands are getting a reprint in this set. That is where a lot of your value is going to be if you're opening this, I assume. That's pretty cool, but again, we're not going to talk about them more than that because they are, you know, reprints, ultimately. There's a cycle of these bridges that are all artifact lands that are indestructible and come into play tapped and tapped for one of their 2 colors. There's one for all 10 color pairs. I think they're pretty cool, honestly. I don't think they're going to be a slam dunk in every deck, but if your deck cares about artifacts, having indestructible duels is a big game. Like, the biggest issue with artifact lands is that they are kind of fragile, right? They, like, if somebody casts, like, Vandal Blast, which is a very common card in Commander, you're risking losing, like, some of your lands, which kind of sucks. Like, yeah, like, having Vandal Blast be land destruction is pretty brutal for the person with the artifact land. So these being indestructible is kind of a nice hedge for that. While still enabling, like, cool artifact, sort of Metalcraft type synergies, which I think is fun. So yeah, so there's a whole cycle of those. We're not going to go over every single one of them. Power Depot is another artifact land. This one is not indestructible, mind you, but it is an artifact land. It taps for colorless. It comes into play tapped, but it has modular 1, which is really cool because if it and when it dies, it actually gets to place a counter on something, or another artifact anyway, which is kind of cool. And then also, it does tap for a mana of any color, but only to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts. So, narrow in its colored mana applications, but a cool land. It kind of reminds me of, like, Llanowar Reborn, which is, like, the weird land from Future Sight that had graft on it. Like, it's basically lands that, like, do other things, which is cool. I like it. Speaking of cool lands, we have Urzas Saga, which is... first of all, hilarious because, yeah, it's yet another in an entry of cards that are named after sets that exist, which I think is very funny. But it's also fair because it actually is the saga of Urza, right? Like, it actually tells a story. So the land first comes... so it's an enchantment land, notably. Which basically means it's a 0-cost enchantment. So again, this is going to go into every Enchantress deck more or less forever because having a land that triggers your Enchantress synergies is like a pretty big deal, I think. So of course it's just a basic colorless land. On chapter 2, it gains the ability to tap for 2 mana to create a construct. And then on chapter 3, you would sacrifice it, but then you get to search. So you lose the land on chapter 3, but you search your library for an artifact card with mana cost 0 or 1, put it onto the battlefield, untapped, notably, then shuffle. So the obvious Commander line of play here is like you're going to go get your Soul Ring with this, or your Mana Crypt if you're playing with a higher budget. But like as a result, it actually, rather than, even though you're losing a land, it's actually accelerating you by mana because you're losing 1 colorless mana to get an artifact that taps for 2 colorless mana. So you're actually gaining mana on the turn permanently, basically. And then you can even recur this and kind of keep going again, right? Crucible of Worlds, Ramunap Excavator, all that stuff. Like, you can bring this back, do it again. Also, notably, thing to remember, you can... so on Chapter 2, you get to tap 2 to make that construct. You can respond to Chapter 3 one last time in your... as this goes off, to tap this and make one more construct before it sacrifices itself. So this actually does give you 2 potential construct tokens over the course of 2 turns, which is cool. And then I think maybe I think it is, yeah, the last new card, the last new land, the last thing for this review is Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth, which is basically just green Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. So it's a legendary land that says that each land is a forest in addition to its other land types. Full stop. So it just does the exact same thing as Urborg does, which is make everything a swamp. This one makes everything a forest. There are currently a lot fewer broken things you can do with everybody's lands being forests than there are with everyone's lands being swamps. Cabal coffers. There is no coffers equivalent in green. I mean, there is. It's called Gaia's Cradle, but it doesn't care about forests. It's like, mostly I've been observing these very amusing spikes in like every card that has the word Forest Walk is getting bought out because people who speculate on Magic are losers with nothing better to do and speculating on dumb things. Don't be those people. But anyway, it's funny. It's a cool card. It technically sets a precedent in terms of like, you know, Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, that's just a one-off, right? Now that you've also printed Yavimaya, there's almost an implicit, what about the blue and red and white ones? I don't think we are likely to see those, especially the red one, for a long time, if ever, because Valakut is a card, so making all lands mountains is pretty effed up with Valakut. However, it does open the door for that. It makes it so that there's a precedent set of like, this is now, rather than being a 1 weirdo land, it's 2 out of 5 in a cycle. And cycles tend to complete themselves, even if they take a really, really long time. So you never know. You never know. But yeah, cool card, interesting land. I'll be curious to see what people end up doing with it. Probably a good thing that Rafellos is still on the ban list. Probably means that Rafellos will never come off the ban list. Not that he was likely to anyway. But certainly that would be a way to abuse Yavimaya. But yeah, and that does in fact also bring us to the end of not only the artifact and lands section of the review, but the review as a whole. So if you were watching this live, thanks a lot. But yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, which seems more likely, thank you a lot as well. Please do consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you did, because it does help kind of indicate to me that this is the kind of content people want to see, and it encourages me to do more of it. But yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you for the next set review.